The Compliance Perspectives podcast is sponsored by Athena, automated compliance training, an employee hotline, and case management all in one tool. Welcome to the Compliance Perspectives podcast. I'm Adam Turteltaub from the Society of Corporate Compliance and Ethics in Healthcare Compliance Association. Joining us today from Washington, D.C. is Catherine Bruno. Catherine is the Assistant Director at the FBI, who oversees their Office of Integrity and Compliance. And today we're going to be talking about a topic she got into at her session at the 2024 Compliance and Ethics Institute. Specifically, she talked about demonstrating the value of your compliance program. Now, Catherine, thanks for taking on that topic. I'm hoping today we can focus on one area you got into, which is the risk assessment. You advocate very rightly for getting voices outside of compliance as part of the risk assessment process. What barriers do compliance teams typically face when trying to get these other departments involved?
Well, thank you so much, first of all, Adam, for having me on today to speak about this topic. Obviously, one very close to my heart in terms of the work that we're doing here at the FBI. I believe that it's very important to get voices from outside of the specific compliance functions of our organization, because when it comes to identifying risk, it's not the compliance folks who are the closest to the activities of the FBI. Our program, our compliance program, covers all operations and activities of the organization, and those are being carried out by the subject matter experts in every one of those domains that we work in. So what we have to do, and our role, is to go out to those folks. And we do have a system, I think, that works well, where it's on a regular cadence, and it's something that's expected and that happens on a 6-month time frame. We go out to everyone and require them to set some time aside to think about compliance risk, and require them to put forward, each field office or each headquarters division, to put forward at least one compliance risk. And we give them some structure and some guidance in how to determine what might be a good risk to put forward. And by doing that, by having that process in place, everyone has to participate, but we're not asking too much of them.
That's interesting, and I think it's wise not to give such a high hurdle. What do you find is the most effective for getting the rest of the organization to participate? Is that the secret sauce, or are there other factors?
One of the strategies that we have found to be the most effective is to use specific examples of times when going ahead and addressing a compliance risk and proactively examining it, coming up with a mitigation plan, and implementing that mitigation plan actually helped us to avoid a particular problem. So we have been able to put together a video for our larger audience, where we have just a select number, I think it's 3 or 4 concrete examples. And these are not compliance people speaking on this video. These are our operators, our subject matter experts, our technologists, who are giving these examples and making it concrete, and essentially selling the program to their colleagues on our behalf.
That's really interesting. And I was going to ask, how do we demonstrate value to people? And that's a terrific example. Are there others you can share?
One of the things that I think is an area for future growth is trying to do a better job in setting out the cost of noncompliance and the cost savings of proactive compliance risk mitigation. The private sector may well be a little bit ahead of us in the government on this particular front. But even so, I think it's a good thing for all of us to think through, how is value being assessed for other parts of the organization, and what can we do to concretely assess value for our programs? Because in tightening budget times, and just when there's a big competition for folks for time and attention and resources, it's important to be able to put value in concrete terms. So to be able to say, well, had we not addressed this risk, it might have cost us X amount of money, or it might have reduced our reputational goodwill by X percent. To be able to quantify things, I think, is really important in an area for all of us to focus on, to share information, frankly, when we have successes in that area, and to improve on as an area of practice.
I keep going back to something you mentioned earlier, which was getting people to identify one risk area. Once we have them in the room, is it good to go back and focus on that with them, or are there other ways for us to pull out insights that are most important to gain?
So, one thing that we do when we have these meetings every 6 months, and so just to provide a little bit more context, here at the FBI, we have 55 field offices around the nation, and we have approximately 22 headquarters divisions. Each of those field offices and each headquarters division is required to have a division compliance committee meeting every 6 months. In advance of that meeting, we actually do a training session every 6 months for our division compliance officers. And we also provide a model agenda for that meeting. And we have oftentimes during our briefing, our pre-meeting briefing for our division compliance officers, we may have a presentation on a particular risk that we are putting out there. In addition, we require at each of those meetings that our field and headquarters divisions go through and take a look at our risks that are at our tier one risk level. So we're trying to have things go in two directions. The direction of sort of organically ideas coming from the field and really trying to get people to think through what keeps me up at night. What am I really concerned about in terms of that next audit that may be coming? What is the area that's going to give me the most pause? All those kinds of things, for things organically to come up from the field. And then also for us at the headquarters level to be providing information about those things that have been identified and are being worked at that top level, to ensure that we have information going in both directions.
That's terrific. So, when the risk assessment is complete, what's the best way to share it with the various participants so that they understand what the results were?
So, one thing that we have done recently is to require that, in addition to a narrative description of the Division Compliance Committee meeting and the risks that were discussed, we require every field office to submit data on the risk that they are looking at. We have created 12, I would say 12 sort of main buckets of risk. Having looked at risk over the years, we believe we have a pretty good way of dividing it up into these 12 subject matters. And then within each bucket, we have subcategories. And we ask that each field office submit to us not only a narrative, but some data. We take that data, we compile it every 6 months, and we push it back out to the field offices so they can compare themselves to others. They can see, oh, look, this risk here, we're the only ones looking at that. It's not necessarily bad or good, but we are, it's information for them to know. Or, oh, this risk, we're actually one of 15 field offices looking at this risk. That's interesting. I wonder what our colleagues are doing in those other offices. So it gives them information to put themselves within a context. And then in addition, we share that data at our branch compliance committee meetings that happen in the month after these division meetings. The branch meetings are at a higher level of the organization here at headquarters. And that data helps our executive assistant directors to understand where the field office is focused as far as risk. What we've also been able to do, we may have an assistant director for a particular division who sees that there are a few field offices looking at a risk that relates to their program. They will say to us, hey, can I get the details? Can you give me the narrative that underlies that data that you have? And then we will actually share those narratives so that that subject matter expert at headquarters can reach out to those field offices and find out what in particular about that topic is concerning and causing it to be on this in this group of risks that have been identified. So we are trying to use that data to enhance everyone's understanding of where their colleagues are and to provide a mechanism for headquarters folks to be further in touch with the field.
That's terrific how they get to see not only what their risks are, but how they stand up against others, and also how management can take advantage of this data to dig further and become part of the solution. Well, Catherine, thank you so much for sharing these insights with us. Well, back in 2024 and again here today. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to listen. I'm Adam Turteltaub from SCCE and HCCA. I hope we're able to expand your compliance perspective.